something I haven't talked about in a while, but is certainly a recurring thread in points I make over the years because it's deeply baked into my teaching approach, my training approach, maybe my approach to life, is that when we're thinking about building something, and obviously so much of what I do is I help people build. I build communities to help people build games. When we're building things, there's different reasons why we might make something. One reason is because that thing, we want it to exist. Another reason is because other people want it to exist. And already, I think a lot of things that get made, we focus on one of those two reasons, right? I mean, a lot of musicians might say they're making music they want to listen to. A lot of game developers might say they're making games they want to play. And of course, if we're doing something commercially, professionally, trying to sell the work, or even just to build up a career and get traction, get our voice out there, get a following, well, then in those cases, we're really focused on what other people want. And maybe, of course, if we're lucky, we're trying to find some Venn diagram overlap of those two things. But there's a third reason to build things. And this is the one actually I tend to focus on, and I think is a underappreciated category and reason for making stuff. And that is to make something not because you want it, necessarily, not because other people want it, but because you want to be different somehow from having made it. That you want to be on the other side of having made that thing. And this is, when you get it, you get it. When you don't get it, it's unclear what I'm trying to communicate. So let's try to take some different angles. There's a certain type of confidence that comes from things you've done before. And this often comes up too when we're trying to get people to build retro projects just for laying the foundations, just to get some basic sort of experience behind them. It's the gap between here's what you are ready to do, here's what you are capable of doing, here's what you could do or can do, versus here's what you've already done. And that seems like a very small distinction, but it's enormous. And the reason why is because you can build on what you've done, and you can't actually build on what you can do, what you are capable of doing. And the reason for this is because just because you're capable of something, quite often what it means is that there's lots of little cracks in it. That what you know is that when you get to those problems, you can fill in those cracks. You can figure it out when you get yourself into that situation. But until you do, you can't build on it because you can't build on something full of cracks. Maybe a little too physical of a metaphor there. But you got to get it behind you to be able to take it further. And so this is quite often why our beginning projects are not fancy or not flashy. They're just about getting ourselves on the other side of having built some things, having built, among other things, our confidence from having finished some projects, from having been through the process, from seeing that we can start where there is nothing, do some things, and now there's a game. And now there's a model. And now there's movement. Now there's input. Now there's high scores that save. Now there's features and functionality that wasn't there until I made it happen. And again, obviously I'm very focused on games. My whole career, my life, my work, my company are focused on game developers. Same thing's absolutely true, right? For short story writing, for making music, for drawing pictures, for, I'd imagine, dance. That's one I don't know much about. But there's things that come from having proven our ability, not just to other people, but also to ourselves, that allow us to think in a different way about the work that we're doing. It allows us to draw upon things we've done because they're things we can take for granted we've solved before. And as I've often focused on recently about the value of deadlines and releasing and finishing things, often the learning really happens from hindsight. It happens from, I can draw upon this thing I've done before, and it's not even like I just pick it up and then I plant it into a newer project. Heavens no. Because usually what happens is after I finished it, I'm full of some twisted up feelings, some regrets, some shame, some hindsight of, I can't believe I did it that way. I guess it kind of works, so we're going to leave it. But next time, I'm going to do it better and differently. And that's where the learning occurs, that gap. And you don't get there until you've done it, until you've finished it, until it's behind you, until you've built it. And so again, I think years and years and years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I did a video about this where my explanation there was, there's people who move things because they're professional movers, and I want them to move that over there. But there's also moving things like when we go to the gym, where nobody needs that barbell raised and lowered. Nobody needs those weights thrown around. But we want to be who we're going to become by being on the other side of having done it. And that quite often in our projects, especially our early projects, our beginning projects, our learning, our foundations, our foothold in game development comes from these projects we build not because other people want to exist, certainly not sellable when it's beginner work, not even because we want it to exist, because quite often we know what we're doing as beginners isn't really all that fun to play. but instead because we want to become someone who's on the other side of having built these things because we can build on that. Building something simply to have built it is already such a more meaningful, powerful starting point when you recognize it's a whole category of reasons to make things. So when you're deciding what to build next, when you're deciding what to build first, perhaps, I encourage you to also consider that lens and not just those other two we tend to focus on, since those are both great, those are both valid, worthwhile, important, but can be incredibly difficult places to start because our bars for entertaining others and ourselves are so high because they're being built off of expectations of other people who've gone through many transitional projects, many transformative projects, many beginning practice projects to get to where they are, building things that entertain us and other people. That's it for today. Thanks so much for tuning in.